One of my favorite stories that I ever read was a story about a man who was walking down the road and fell into a hole. Fell into a big hole. He was really upset. He obviously wasn't paying attention to what he was doing, and it was not easy to get out of the hole. And his thoughts were, what an inconvenience this is to fall into a hole. This isn't my fault. I didn't put this hole here. And the next day, going down the same road, he fell into the same hole. And it was a little easier to get out because he'd had some experience. But still his thoughts were, who put this hole here? Why is this here? What an inconvenience. And I didn't put this hole here. This is somebody's fault, and it's not mine. The third day, pretty much the same process happened again. But on the fourth day, it was different. He fell into the hole. And he said, this is my fault falling in this hole. I do something about falling in this hole. And he was pretty experienced at getting out. And on the fifth day, he took a different road. Sure, there were other holes, but at least that one he got past. So many of us learn the same lesson over and over. Myself, I am a slow learner, and I use that to my advantage whenever I can now to say, be aware of lessons. Get it as quickly as you can. We don't have an infinite time on this planet. Let's get this. There's always more lessons. I want to learn them. It's satisfying to learn a lesson and move on. And it's frustrating to have to get the same lesson again and again and again. And very typically, with lessons, the lessons come in a stronger form each time, trying a little more aggressively to get our attention before we finally get the message, whether it's to drive carefully, or to stop putting our hand on hot stoves, or to stop eating foods that give us indigestion, or to eat raw foods in combinations that leave us struggling for a day or two, paying a price. Is the price worth it? What I'd like to do is share with you some of the strategies that I've used to stay ahead of these pitfalls. Success strategies that allow me to use the facts and recognizing the fiction, stay in a position where I feel that I'm thriving with my raw food diet instead of surviving on a raw food diet. One of the basic concepts that comes to me again and again is why I do things. I normally do things in order to get somewhere or something. I have a destination or a goal in mind, and I haven't found that there are exceptions to the guideline that I'll give you. If your nose itches, you scratch it. But if it doesn't itch, you don't scratch it. You have no motivation to scratch a nose that does not itch. If your nose itches and you scratch it, but that doesn't help the itch, how many times would you scratch your nose before you looked for some other solution? Would you scratch it all day, hoping the itch would go away? Would you scratch it for a week or a month? How many times would you do something that you had information was destined to fail? How many times would you keep hoping that it would become a success the next time? How many times will we go back to learning the raw food, cooked food message? As far as I can tell, there's really only one valid reason that people eat raw food, because cooked food didn't work. We all tried cooked food. It's a rare person who's never had cooked food. It's an exceptionally rare person who wasn't raised on cooked food. I've only met one or two or three people that I can think of in my whole life that didn't spend the first 20 or 30 years of their life eating cooked food, trying to make it work. Trying to make it work for animal rights, trying to make it work environmentally, trying to make it work health-wise, trying to make it work as far as controlling their weight, trying to make it work as far as their kids' ADD, trying to make it work as far as the costs involved in missed work and sick time and doctor bills, not just the cost of buying food, but the total cost. And over we tried to make it work because it tastes good, because that's what we were raised with, because socially that's what we were taught is the way it's done. A lot of reasons why we tried to make it work, but it failed and it failed and it failed and it failed, and to any light that we hold cooked food up, it fails the test. And we try again anyway, because we're so attached somehow to doing what we've always done rather than making change. I'm attached to change at this point. I've changed so many things in my life, I like change. I'm not threatened by change. I change. I don't need to keep my foot on first base hoping I can sneak out to second base. I'm going to run to second base, and the heck with it. Even a turtle has to stick its neck out if it wants to get ahead. Be willing to take that risk. Funny thing is that all science, all sense, all experience, all the issues all point to and tell us that raw food in every way is better than cooked. In fact, it even tastes good too. So cooked food tastes good becomes a non-valid reason for eating cooked food because raw food tastes good too. In fact, most of the raw fooders I know insist that raw food tastes better than cooked food. I tend to agree. In fact, I know that cooked food is bland in and of itself. Without the addition of spices and herbs and salts and vinegar and flavoring agents and stabilizers, enhancers, and colors, all of which impart something. And without the addition of heated fats, cooked food tastes really bland, whereas raw food tastes really great. It's complete in and of itself. So if you knew the light switch on the wall didn't work, but you were running out of light and you needed light for reading your book, how many times would you get up out of your chair and go hit the light switch? Maybe the first time or two you might, but if every day for a week you were still trying that switch, it would be nutty to try to make something that doesn't work without going about it some different way. In fact, you would have no motivation whatsoever to get out of your chair if you knew the light switch didn't work. You would have no motivation whatsoever to scratch your nose if you knew that wouldn't solve the itch. You would stop doing it. And people say to me sometimes, well, you just have so much willpower. And I think, I wish they knew. I have so little willpower. I'm easily distractible. But when I want something, I go after it. I focus on a goal. I go towards it. I was sick for the better part of 20 years, the first 20 years of my life. I thought sick was normal. I thought not leaving the house without a box of tissues or a little packet of tissues in my pocket was normal. I thought a house with a box of tissues in every single room of the house was normal. I thought boils on my skin was normal. I thought never being able to breathe through my nose was normal, and that dandruff was normal, and that waking up tired was normal, and having achy joints was normal, and not being able to control my weight was as normal as any other part of life, and that the Sandman was normal, and allergies were normal, and the list grows and grows. And I didn't focus on my ill health. I didn't realize that it was anything other than how it was until it wasn't. And then I said, wow, I can smell things. My skin is clear. I can bend over. I can do things that I couldn't do. It was truly miraculous. And experiencing it for just a little bit was more than enough for me to go, I'm never going back there. In other words, I'm talking about the road to health. The road to health requires that we do the things necessary for health to accumulate. It's no different than a house plant that comes with a little list of requirements. If we give that house plant everything it needs, we give it water and the right temperature and the right nutrients and the right pH, and we give it everything it needs in the right type of soil and everything it wants. Except it's supposed to get sunlight, and we've stuck it in a closet with total darkness. Well then, that plant is not going to thrive. In fact, it's going to show us symptoms. If we give it everything we need, including light, but take away the water, or everything it needs, including water, but we put it in the freezer, we give the plant everything we need except any one thing, it's going to show symptoms. The symptoms tell us that the plant isn't getting what it needs. If we don't give it 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 5, it's going to show more symptoms and varied symptoms. And I'll never forget learning that there is a condition that children can be born with. There's a condition that children are born with where they feel no pain. What a marvelous thing. Feel no pain. And doctors come in and tell the mama that their baby's been born with a condition where they feel no pain. And the mother has like a dream come true experience because baby feels no pain. That's what they want. They want their baby to always be protected, never feel pain, should never know this hardship. And then the doctor has to also tell the mother that never in the history of humankind have we ever raised any of these babies to adulthood. And for sure, when I was 5 years old, if I could feel no pain, I would have cut my arm open to see what was inside. I was a curious kid. I might have cut my sister's arm open to see what was inside first, but I would have eventually got to mine too. Pain is what tells us that everything isn't as it should be. Pain is how we find out that all is not well, or discomfort, or a wide host of symptoms. I welcome the symptoms. The symptoms are no different than the instrument panel on a jet plane. If you got on a jet plane and looked into the cabins area, into the captain's cabin, and saw that he had duct tape covering up the entire instrument panel, and say, what's going on here? And he goes, oh, I got a feel for this. I know what's going on my jet. I don't need the instrument panel. Me, I'm not flying on that plane. I want him to have the instrument panel. We rely on the instrument panel in our car, the minimal amount of information that we get back from that. I had a friend who actually put duct tape over the red brake light that came on his dashboard. And I got in the car and said, what's the duct tape for? He said, well, the red light keeps coming on. Bothers me while I'm driving. So that's an important light. He goes, well, yeah, I guess figure it was, but there's either put duct tape over the dashboard or cut the wire. Then the light wouldn't come on anymore. I'm going, what kind of crazy world are we living in where we don't want to get the feedback from our own body? Let's suppress the symptoms through the use of drugs. Let's cut out the parts that are offending us rather than find out what is wrong, what conditions are we not supplying that can help us to get well. It's imperative. There are people, literally millions of people, dying in hospitals every year for lack of knowledge that they can get well by making some lifestyle changes, by making some food style changes, by making some really easy changes, by eating more fruits and vegetables. Who's threatened by eating more fruits and vegetables? Very few people ever are threatened by the concept of eating more fruits and vegetables. Yes, they might dig in their heels if we said, to the exclusion of everything else, but that's not what we're saying. We're talking about a direction. And throughout this whole presentation, we've been talking about what direction are you heading. We never force the speed. We teach you how to enhance the speed, how to direct it. If you're in a car here in Atlanta and you want to go to Los Angeles, it is almost exactly due west. And if you go at 100 miles an hour due north, you'll never get to Los Angeles. But you could go at 1 mile an hour due west, and you'll be at Los Angeles in an eventual amount of time. But you'll never get there at 1,000 miles an hour heading due south. Direction is critical. The speed you can control. There are, again, millions of young people smoking cigarettes, knowing that it's killing them, with no immediate, observable to them, noticeable, worthwhile symptoms worthy of them going, oh, that's some really bad response to that cigarette. They have no perceived need. They have no reason to quit. Everything seems to be working pretty well when they're 16. The amount of knowledge that you have will determine how much faith you have. Your needs are your reasons. I don't know what your reasons are. I don't know whether you want to take good care of yourself because it's nice for your ego, or you want to eat raw foods to save your life, or to improve your athletic performance, or to control your weight, or to watch your great-grandkids graduate from college rather than be a statistic long before then, or to set a good example, to influence other people, or what your reasons are. I have no idea, but I suggest that you increase your list, whether it's in animal rights concerns or environmental concerns or financial concerns or impact on the world or influencing other people or your own personal harvest of health results. I don't know what the reasons are. What's the hot button for you? But I suggest that you increase the number of reasons, because Your faith times your knowledge equals motivation. And if we know that the scratching of the nose isn't going to help, you lose all faith that scratching your nose will help. And if you don't know that eating a diet of whole, fresh, ripe, organic plants will get you out of the hospital and back home and feeling good and weight under control and symptoms gone, if you don't have the knowledge, then you're not going to make the changes. And if you don't see reasons or have perceived needs, if everything's going perfectly for you just the way they are, well then you have no reason to change. And in any case, 0 times anything equals 0. The more you raise your faith, the more you raise your needs. The more you raise your motivation. You get to a point where it's obviously well worth it to you. You become motivated to live or to act out your philosophies. You get congruency between your beliefs and your actions by raising your knowledge, yielding faith, by increasing your list of needs. Put your list of needs where you can see it. Put it on the refrigerator door. Put it in the mirror you use every day. Put it on the wall of the John right in front of you. Put them in all 3 places. Put it on the dashboard up above, on the visor of your car. Put it in places where you're going to say, oh, you know, I'm doing this for a reason. I'm becoming who I'm trying to become for a reason. For a whole bunch of reasons. My own reasons. Nobody else's reasons. Incorporate that into your very being. When somebody says to you, why do you eat raw? Well, Razi told you a lot of great nutritional reasons. And hopefully you give some of those reasons back out about the protein being denatured, or the carbohydrates being caramelized, or the fats going carcinogenic. And there's a lot of reasons nutritionally that you can give, but that might not mean anything to the person you're responding to. You might just have a long list of reasons, and then ask them, well, what would be a good reason to you? And find out what it is that's interesting to them. It was interesting last night during questions and answers that we answered a lot of questions. But my feeling was that the one question that got the most intense listening response was the one where I used a technique that I had mentioned the day before, which was, that's a really good question, I said. I said, I used to think the exact same thing that you think now. Let me tell you what I found out. And my response after that actually was me up on a soapbox being pretty darn strong about it. Had I started out being that aggressive in my response, everyone would have felt the aggressiveness of it. Everyone would have lost the feeling of, you know what, our similarities outweigh our differences here. I used to try to push my differences on people. I got off the A party list pretty quickly in my hometown. I realized that I wasn't getting my message across to people by emphasizing how different I was. And I started emphasizing our similarities. Okay, we have some differences. Everybody does. But when I emphasized similarities, when I became a good old boy living in Georgia, then it was easy to insert a message into a friendly conversation. It was impossible to insert a message in an argument. Impossible. My own personal experience watching myself improve on a raw food diet is more than enough to convince me that it's worth doing for the rest of my life. Next year I will have been raw for as long as I had been cooked. And someone asked me still the other day, yeah, but is raw food really all that good? Being raw, is it really worth it? They actually asked me, and I go, well, what do you think? After 24 years, I'm still raw. Do you think that I'm doing it for any other reason than the results? Of course it's worth it. I encourage people to experiment. As we said, play. Find out what's going on. Look at what you're doing through one end of the microscope, one end of the telescope. Look at what you're doing through the other end of the telescope. Regain perspective when you've lost perspective by playing with the telescope. Or whatever else you need to do. Put something up high, put something down low. You can regain your perspective and get a glimpse of how we fit in the rest of society. If we alienate ourselves totally, our opportunity to make this world a better place, to be a force for good, become diminished. dramatically compared to when we are integrated and associated right within the webwork of society. I've watched so many sick people get well on a raw food diet that, to me, there is no question about raw or cooked. Which way should I go? I've watched arthritics that couldn't move a joint in their body, that complained when we put a sheet over them because the pressure on their toes was too much weight. That we had to carry them to the bathroom and spoon feed them raw food. Invariably, within 3 weeks, on every single occasion, these people were walking up and down stairs and walking around the block and out and about. I've seen people with chronic fatigue syndrome so extreme that they couldn't stand the pull of gravity. Laying in bed was too exhausting. They had to go in isolation tanks because they couldn't take that much sensory input or that much gravity in the course of their day and spend half the day in a sensory deprivation water tank. I've watched them get well to the point where they go, well, now I've got a full-time job and I'm going to college full-time, but I'm looking for something to do with my free time. What do I do now? I'm just like, raw foods, it did the job. I've seen people literally heal themselves from almost every condition that anyone could ever name. I've seen the top performers in the world improve their performance simply by changing their diet. From top performers from almost every sport imaginable improve their performance simply by making a dietary change. To me, it's so inspirational. It's so moving. I have so much confidence. It's not, well, yeah, maybe I'll give raw food a try for another year. But I still encourage other people to experiment. Try all raw. Go as raw as you can, however raw that is. Increase the percentage of raw fruits and vegetables, or rise to the challenge and take a year of all raw. And at the end of the year, then see whether or not you like being raw or whether you want to go cooked. Because for sure the cooked food will still be there. There's no question of that. Maybe someday cooked food will be immoral, but at the moment it's still legal and moral to most people's standards. To mine, I can't buy into it anymore. I can't honestly tell you that eating cooked foods to me doesn't seem like a travesty, that it's anti-animal rights, something I believe in so much, that it's environmentally a disaster, and we all have to live here, and our kids and our grandkids, and what are we passing on? The cooked food experiment has failed. The cooked food experiment has failed over and over and over and over and over. And when we see that much failure, at some point we go, we've dropped the ball here. Cooked food isn't working like we thought it was. It's not better living through chemistry. It's another failure in the technological world for which we're paying a much too severe price. I look forward so much to adding your stories into my wealth of history. I look forward to the good times that come when our paths cross again and again, and we're going, yeah, life is really terrific. Life is so good when you feel good, and life is so bad when you feel bad. Why anyone would want to purposefully harm themselves is really difficult for me to fathom. I understand that for lack of knowledge, some people harm themselves with their forks because they know of no other way to eat. We'll influence people by setting an example for them. We'll influence people by looking the part. I wish each and every one of you the happiest and healthiest raw year. Thank you very much. Each and every one of you the happiest and healthiest raw year. Thank you very much. Each and every one